Thank you very much for being here tonight. I would like to thank for the organizers and the distinguished speakers as well. This is an important event because we are talking about an important person. Nιχάτ Ερίμ is a person who shaped the Turkey's policies, Turkey's strategies on Cyprus during the most critical times. We know, all we know that he was active during the 50s when Turkey first interested with the Cyprus, then later in 60s in the Acheson plan, he was the person Turkey assigned to talk with the Acheson. But there is one more thing that many people, even in Turkey, oversee. The Nιχάτ Ερίμ was also very instrumental in the 1974 occupation. I will talk about that as well because there is a very important historical detail over there. But first of all, when I talk about the Nιχάτ Ερίμ, I try to explain him with two sentences. You know, in history, there are some people who we exaggerate and who we give more importance than they are. And there are some people we underestimate and see them as less important. And usually these people are, we see that way because these people prefers to be in shadow. Nιχάτ Ερίμ is a person like that. He was in shadow in the Turkish politics, even though he was he had very important positions. That was his preferable choice. And when we read his book, his book was his memoirs from 1950s to middle of 1965, you can see the reason why he did that because he was like a Turkish politician, but also acted like a foreign asset, that he was talking a lot about the British and the US political advantages. And of course, when he shaped the Turkish politics, Turkish strategy on Cyprus, he also very strategically considered the British and American interest as well. Now, first few sentences about the Turkey, because we also have to know what is Turkey, understand what is Turkey, because Turkey is quite different than Greece or many other countries as well. The government doesn't shape the Turkey's policies in the national causes like Cyprus. There is a state structure that continues since the imperial time. The Turkey, France, England, these countries who from imperial power to change to the nation states, modern nation states, they carried their traditions with them and they carried their structures with them and continued their nation state period. And Nιχάτ Erim's policies that he shaped from middle of 1950s to 1960s still continues today. Turkey's and the Nιχάτ Erim's in his book, over and over, he repeats some arguments. The first argument is the historical argument, Turkey's position about the Cyprus in history. They say that because Britain annexed Cyprus during the First World War, if the Britain leaves Cyprus, then it has to be returned to Turkey. This is the Turkey's historical argument about Cyprus. The other argument of Turkey is the geographical and security-wise. And this argument started from the Menderes time, Adnan Menderes time. And he says that Cyprus is a natural extension of Turkey, Anatolia. And it's essential for the security of the Turkey. Therefore, we have to have it no matter what. And the third argument of Nιχάτ Ερίμ, and even today Turkey's policies based on is that even if there is no Turkish Cypriot lives on Cyprus, Cyprus should belong to Turkey. This is the Nιχάτ Ερίμ in 1950s shaped these arguments. And if you today, after this event, when you go to your home, go to the Google and write Turkish Foreign Ministry and Cyprus issue, because there's a propaganda in the website of the Turkish Foreign Ministry. First sentences everything Turkish propaganda based on these three facts. The first sentences. It starts with saying that Cyprus is the natural extension of Turkey. Then it continues with saying that we will come over there because Nιχάτ Ερίμ was obsessed about that. That was based on the Turkish strategy. There are two people lives in Cyprus, and it continues with the other historical arguments and etc. And Nιχάτ Ερίμ, in his book, gave us the formula of how Turkey sees the Cyprus issue. The most favorable option for Turkey to list. There are 5 options. The first one, of course, the main aim of Turkey is to control all Cyprus. The second one, the lesser favorable, is partition, which is Taksim. The third one, this option comes after 1960, is federation, bizonal bicommunal federation. Fourth one is the independent Cyprus, and the fifth one is enosis. This is the Nιχάτ Erim's formulation of the favorable to least favorable option. And when Turkey started its policies towards Cyprus in 1950s, they wanted to start with the partition, start with the partition and go to the ultimate aim of control of Turkey. But the Cyprus and the Greece made a smart strategy using the periods, moments, which is using the term of self-determination. And Nιχάτ Ερίμ, in his book, many times complains about that, because that term, self-determination, ruined Turkey's aims to go to the international community and say that there are Greeks, there are Turks in Cyprus. The best solution is to basically separate it. Then Nιχάτ Ερίμ comes with another idea, which Turkey continues to do today. Says that, okay, self-determination is what United Nations Declaration says. Peoples has right to self-determination. But the United Nations doesn't define what is people and what is nation. So we, as a Turkey, we will go with the idea that if there is a people in Cyprus, there are two peoples, Greeks and Turks. So if there is a self-determination, both of them should have a self-determination. So this became the Turkey's main strategy. Even today, as you know, you hear the Erhürman, you hear other politicians, they keep on talking about the two people, two sovereignty, and going on. When the independence, of course, came, and that was the Constitution and the London and Zurich Agreement, the Nιχάτ Erim's idea, Nιχάτ Ερίμ was, of course, supporting that. Turkey, of course, supporting that, because they had one obstacle about saying there are two peoples in Cyprus, because people were living together. So if Turkey was going to talk about the self-determination, only it could talk about if Turkish Cypriots were living in the certain area, so they can make a self-determination over there and declare independence. That wasn't the case. So Nιχάτ Ερίμ and Turkey used the London and Zurich Agreement. They divide the people into two communities and try to find the correct time to segregate people. Nιχάτ Ερίμ, in his book, complains about this a lot. He is obsessed about this mixed, why in Cyprus people are living mixed, and he is obsessed about this people theory. He gives one anecdote in his book. He says that when he goes to villages, mixed villages, he sees Turkish Cypriot with the name Mehmet Hristo. And he says that this bothered him a lot. And he asked about why there are many Turkish Cypriot with one Muslim name and one Christian name. Of course, they gave him a different reason over there. But we know the reason, because the reason is the Turkish Cypriots, most of the Turkish Cypriots come from the Linobambaki background. And he said that in his book, for achieve what we want to do, we need to bring the imams to Cyprus as well, to make these Turkish Cypriots Muslim again. So he's concentrated about the population transfer and the culture transfer a lot in his work. And of course, the London and Zurich Agreement. The anecdote over there I would like to share with you. In 1959, when before the London and Zurich Agreement, before the independence, Nιχάτ Ερίμ already started talking about Cyprus being federation. He was in the meetings, he says in his book, in the events, he said that this constitution is a federation, even though it doesn't divide the island. Of course, this is not correct. This is not true, because even though it's a bicommunal constitution, constitution is a unitary constitution, because the main legislative, judicial, and the administrative power concentrates in the one central government. And he says that people attacked him a lot because of that, and he said that this is the Turkey's real aim, which is partition. And in 1964, after the Turkish Cypriots left the government and created the violence in Cyprus, and started forcing Turkish Cypriot to be going to the enclaves, which is the Nιχάτ Erim's idea to create an isolated Turkish Cypriot population. I'm going to read you the words that İsmet İnönü said in the Turkish parliament. This is from the Turkish parliament's website, from the archive. He said that in order to remain within the limits of the Treaty of Zurich and London, we did not officially use word partition. We began discussing through the concept of federation. So this is basically was the Turkey's tactic, using the London and Zurich agreement to create two different communities, then create a violence and divide the people. Where we are coming to, we are coming from here to 1974. Because until 1974, okay, there was pockets where Turkish Cypriots were living, but there wasn't a big segregation. And that's against the Nιχάτ Erim's strategy, against the Turkey's strategy. So in 1971, this is important information that many people oversee. In Turkey, there was going to be a military coup, which was a left-leaning coup. The people who did the 1960 coup, they were going to do again in 1971. One of the leaders were Mihri. He was a Turkish communist who were also fighting in the Greek civil war with the Greek communists, very dedicated. And all these left-wing personalities and the army officers was going to do a coup. And CIA with MIT ended this coup and created a military regime in 1971. And who did they put as prime minister? Nιχάτ Ερίμ. And who did they put as a foreign minister? Osman Olcay. Osman Olcay was NATO Vice General Secretary. And they called him to Turkey to be a foreign minister just for 1 year in March 1971. Where I'm going to come from here to the famous June 1971 Lisbon meeting, NATO Lisbon meeting, where the partition of Cyprus talked. 1971 is the year that both in Turkey and both in Greece there were American-backed military regimes. And the Lisbon Agreement made while Nιχάτ Ερίμ was in the power, because Nιχάτ Ερίμ was so good asset for the foreigners as well, also the Turkey. And 1974, of course, that we believe that happened because of these reasons. Before, ending my speech, just mentioning few things. Turkey is used always these strategies, these medium forms, transition forms, such as the Zurich and London Agreement, such as the talk about federation, such as the Taksim or two-state solution. These are not solutions for Turkey. Turkey's ultimate aim is to control all Cyprus. Because I'm saying this because right now many Cypriots believe that what can happen in Cyprus worst? Worst is the two-state solution. No, Turkey would never let Cyprus to have two-state solution. They would never let the entity in the occupied area to have some status and finish over there. And even the people like Alparslan Türkeş, as you know, he was the Cypriot origin leader of the Grey Wolves and National Movement Party. During the 70s, he was supporting federation, even though he was saying that all Cyprus has to be Turk. He was writing in the newspaper that federation is the way to go, because that is the strategy of Turkey. To use these transitional forms, to use this propaganda, but everything is a tool for full occupation of Cyprus. Even the Turkish Cypriots are the tool for that, as they say, as Nιχάτ Ερίμ says, if there was no Turkish Cypriot on the island, even though we have to have all Cyprus. As in 1997, Ecevit said again in the parliament of Turkey. As 2017, the son of Türkeş, who was the vice prime minister in Turkey for Erdogan, again repeated. And lastly, we have to be awake, because Turkey has a strategy, and that's not changing with the governments. When Erdogan goes, when Kemalists comes, when the other comes, it is not gonna change. For Cyprus, they have a aim to control all island, and that's why we have to be awake and we have to fight for the liberation of the Cyprus. There is only one solution, and that is the liberation. Thank you very much.